All righty. DJ Nubis here with my co-host Kevin Lambert. What is it? Just entertainment headquarters now? Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, yeah.
How are
Fair
you? How you
entertainment.
doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Just working hard, just doing my thing.
Well, for those of you watching, we do this little thing called the Cinematic Synergy, and we take an album each month and we alternate picks. Yeah, a movie. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm so used to doing music all the time. Uh, so this time you picked 2022's The Invitation. I was calling it The Initiation at first. But it's directed by Jessica Thompson. The cast includes Natalie, I think Nathalie. I don't know. It's kind of a weird spelling.
Yeah,
Emmanuel, Thomas Doherty, Sean Pertwee, and a very lovely gal by the name of Alana Boden.
yeah.
Uh, Sean Pertwee, big fan. I've really enjoyed a lot of his work, including Equilibrium, Dog Soldiers, Event Horizon, and Soldiers. So he's been around the
Especially
block.
Dog Soldiers, he's
Yep,
just awesome. That's a
phenomenal.
cult.
Yep. Uh, so the plot of this is a young woman is courted and swept off her feet, only to realize a gothic conspiracy is afoot. And it's interesting because at first I wasn't paying too much attention, but then as things went on in the movie, I started catching little things. And this is kind of like an interesting reworking of Dracula because we start seeing familiar names pop up, but it's not your traditional roles.
Mhm.
We have people like, of course, Renfield, which Pertwee is portraying that
Yeah,
character. Lucy's in there, but in a different role there. And then I found out later, like I didn't catch it the first time, but there's an older couple that are portraying Jonathan and Mina Harker, and they're not even really part of the main story. So it's kind
no,
of interesting how they fit in. Um, so basically, Evie, our main character here, she works as a caterer with a good friend and often find themselves either looked upon or dealing with sexism. Sorry, Neko's like dancing in front of me naked, and it's really distracting right now. So
woohoo!
she's trying to mess with my feed. Um,
It's working.
yeah, this would have to go like OnlyFans if she got in camera. Um, So Evie is a caterer, and she's kind of dealing with sexism and a bit of like just the uber rich kind of looking down upon her because she's serving them or whatever, and they're just
Mhm.
she's there with her friend, and but eventually she's also lost her parents. I think when she was younger.
Yeah, so well, going back to this event that they're at, it's an event, I think it's for a company that talks about, your heritage and how you can track back your heritage. And I forgot the name of the company, but they've obviously been hired by a catering company to do this event for this company that looks into your past and can track down your family tree. And she just happens to be at this event. We need to go back before that slightly because I found the start of this film very interesting because it took you back to the past where I think, which is revealed later on, that
Mhm.
it's a grandmother or a great grandmother who was in this huge manor in a town called Carfax, I think it's called, near Whitby. So that straight away gives you clues of the gothic vibe.
Yeah,
And Whitby obviously was where Bram Stoker got his inspiration to write the novel Dracula. So straight away it had gothic connections and vampire connections. And there was a brilliant death right at the beginning, this movie, which I thought was well done, very creative. And then, like you say, we'll fast forward to this event and she's just there serving, and then suddenly she herself gets an email from somebody who must have tracked her down apparently at this event who who says he's our cousin
Mhm.
who's from British descendants.
Yeah. It should
And
be noted that the British descendant, but then Evie herself is like black. So the guy's name is Oliver,
Mm-hmm.
and they get together at a dinner and they talk to meet each other. And obviously Oliver explains how she fits into their bloodline and their descendancy and all this stuff. And then invites her to a wedding at the manor that you spoke of in England. So go ahead and take it from there.
So they arrive at the manor, and obviously he's invited her not to meet the relatives, these ancestors who are there to attend a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously she gets there, and it's just blown her mind how big the place is, how rich the person who owns this manor, and the staff. Obviously, you see the maid, you see this butler character who ends up being their version of Renfield. You meet a lovely maid who basically becomes a friend, and then you of course meet who is the master of the manor, who is Deville,
Yep.
who is aka Dracula.
Which we don't know right away, but
No.
it is interesting seeing when she arrives at the manor, because we see like this van of maids that get out of the van, and she bumps into one destroying the glassware, and that's when Renfield walks up and he kind of scolds the maid, which causes tension between Renfield and Evie right away. But Walter walks up, Walter Deville introduces himself and tells Renfield, "This is our special guest, Evie," and then like they go and she checks out the manor where she's sleeping and all that. We also sort of like discovered he's like, aside from the Deville, there's like three families, and two of them, not Oliver's part, but the other two have a couple of daughters, Victoria and Lucy, who are sort of like, we don't really know right away what their roles are, but we just know they're kind of important to the families in some way. Um, but then all of a sudden we start noticing, like as time starts going on, maids start disappearing. We see them being attacked by something in the manor, which is really weird because Renfield's kind of like late at night, sending them off to certain parts of the house to clean in the middle
Well,
of the
at one point he says, "Oh, the library." He said to Evie in the beginning, "The library's out of bounds because it's being renovated." But
yes,
in actual fact, that is basically where Walter Deville. That's kind of his lair where he sleeps and hibernates, and you see maids going in and not coming back out. You see, like, the way it was filmed was pretty well done with how they created the atmosphere. The look of the manor was amazing.
yeah,
Like,
very nice looking. Yep.
like it was very, very the set designs and some of the shots of the manor were well put together, and even the cellar scenes were quite, creepy, and they caught me attention.
Mm-hmm.
And because you could hear the things moving about, and then of course on top of all the things of the maids go missing, the atmosphere, location, Evie's also appears she's having visions or dreams,
Yep.
nightmares, and she's seeing things above her bed. She's seeing things sitting in a chair in the shadows in front of her. She can hear noises all around, and she just starts to get very unsettled. And I think she starts to get the idea that not everything is what it appears to be.
Yeah. As you said, she starts just seeing things that don't make sense. Um, One thing that we do notice early on is that there's like this spark of romance happening between Walter and Evie. Walter, aka Dracula, at this point, we see them getting closer. Evie still thinks that she's there for this wedding. She hasn't met the bride or groom yet, but that's kind of like a just for people to know. This will be a spoiler review because it's been out since 2022. So by the time we get to the end, you're gonna know what's going on. If you don't want to watch the rest, I understand, but this is one of these movies that's been out for a while, so we're gonna talk about it in full. Um, but yeah, the romance is brewing, and of course, when she's getting scared about all the weird things happening, he's there to comfort her. That's drawing him closer and closer.
Mm.
Uh, let's see, what are my notes here? Okay, so eventually we're getting to this big dinner that's going to happen, and everyone's there. Evie gets her kind of late. She slept in late, and she has this woman who's like her personal maid, older lady that's helping her out, getting her there. And when Evie gets there, it's supposed to be like a dare to finally meet the bride and groom, but Walter gets up, and that's when he announces that he's actually going to wed Evie, which turns everything right away. Like all of a sudden, shit's going south. She's confused, and then you don't even get settled in with that. And then we see Renfield go up to one of the maids at the table, slit her throat into like let her blood go into like this chalice thing, and we start seeing like everyone drinking and eating flesh and blood, and it's getting really weird fast. And of course, Walter's starting to explain, to everyone, or explain to us, the audience, like, you've all been working together for all these years, and we realize that the families, even though they're human, outside of the two, Lucy and Victoria, we realize are his brides, his other brides. Um, Everyone else is just there because they get protection from Dracula and profits. So it's like this. They're kind of like doing his bidding by providing him with food and brides, but then they get all this protection, like they get benefits for.
Yeah, they get the prosper off of what he provides for them through his wealth and these connections, and like you see, Victoria, because you've got Lucy and Victoria. Lucy is quite charming and is quite just a bubbly young bride, and she's like, and then you've got Victoria, the other bride, who is just the complete opposite. She's very cold.
Yeah.
She's very, she's basically
very proper, stern.
Yeah. And even I quite like the scene prior to that, which was the hen party or the bachelorette party, where they were going for a spa day, and there was a tension there between Evie and Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this scene where Victoria's in the hot pool, which is all steamy with hot water, and she's goating on. She's like really having a go at Evie, trying to get her to explode or to say something so she could have something to say back. And she stands out of the water very seductively after Evie finally does snap and talks back, and she gets her finger cut.
Yeah.
Victoria walks up to her and like sucks her finger, and it just totally turns Evie, and she knows this is just something is completely off here.
Yeah.
And that is when she went up to the room, and Walter DeVille, aka who we know is going to turn out to be Dracula, he tried. I think it was all part of his master plan to get her to side with him, because she did some snooping around and investigating. She found out that Walter had a big file on his desk of her.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is they end up going to the room. He kind of seduces her and tricks her into saying yes to his wedding proposal. Because I don't think she can actually become a bride unless she says she's willing to say yes and become a bride. Because it is similar to that story where you don't invite a vampire into your house. A vampire cannot enter your home unless you say yes and invite the vampire in. I think this is a similar situation where I found was a good twist, where she couldn't become a bride unless she said yes to his proposal.
Yeah, and there's like this, it didn't expand on it, which is unfortunate, but there's this like weird backstory with the families, because it's almost like a competition. So like there's a point where Victoria is talking with Oliver when they first are kind of introducing Evie to everybody, and Victoria's kind of like giving Oliver the business, like, do you really think she's good enough or whatever? This and Oliver's like, what are you jealous? It's this weird tension between the family, even though Victoria is clearly more powerful at being a vampire than Oliver. Uh, it's just one of these weird things and dynamics that we didn't really learn about because it's like it looks like Oliver's side of the family was trying desperately to find like a female bloodline somewhere, and that's how they came across Evie.
Well, yeah, because that is well the last bloodline relative they had was the grandmother who at the beginning who was our grandmother who committed basically suicide before
Yeah,
she even walked down the aisle to be the bride, and they thought there was no one left of the Alexander bloodline.
yeah. I'm wondering because you remind me about it now because of the grandmother. She says it all ends with me now.
Because
Is
she
it
thought
was it supposed to be something Dracula's supposed to have three brides in order to continue? Like I don't. They never really explained a lot of that. Like
yeah,
it seems like they
I
really
think
need.
generally, I think what they tried to do is each of the families around Walter Deville, because Walter Deville is the main family with his two brides.
Right.
There's three families that he has doing all his bidding. And I think the Alexander family, which is where Evie comes from, they thought they had no more females left
Right.
to be a bride to Dracula, Walter, because the grandmother committed suicide. And then he, like I say, he went to this event and went through the history of the bloodline, the heritage, and managed to find that there was one female left of their family, which is Evie.
Right.
And I think it was a desperate attempt to get Evie to become a bride, because I think if he couldn't have found another female to be a part of the bloodline to continue, their family might not have ended up continued to prosper and be protected by Dracula.
Right.
Kind of the vibe I got. It was like a desperate attempt. He was desperate to find her,
Yeah.
and he tricked her to go to Whitby, to go to England. And like you say, when she said yes to becoming his bride, which she said, "Oh yes," jokingly, after they had that she'd been seduced, they had sex, and we're going back to the dinner party now. You suddenly seen a huge change in Walter.
Yeah.
Like his personality's changed, his facial expression changed. He showed now like the sinister side of who he truly was.
Did you get a sense that with Doherty, who plays Walter, there was times when his side profile, he reminded me of what is it, Rami Malek.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I did.
I kept looking. I was like, man, he's like not straight on, but if you see from the side profile, I was like, man, that sounds like Rami. It's like really weird.
Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, so after this dinner happens and like stuff's just going south, of course Victoria's like all happy because now she can like be who she wants to be. We pointed to Lucy being more bubbly. She's kind of like the one that has accepted who she is, but she's still playful and she's like still wants to be friendly. Like she's like the counter opposite to Victoria.
yeah. Well,
But
I think they're trying to play like to the true. As we know, this is like you mentioned at the beginning. It's slightly a modern retelling and a twisted version of the Dracula story.
right,
So, as you know, in the original Dracula story, Lucy was very bubbly,
yeah,
and she was going to marry somebody, and then Dracula seduced her and took her away.
yeah,
And Victoria, for me, is a perfect character because she's playing basically the stereotypical cold-hearted Dracula bride.
yeah,
She's being bitchy, she's being cold-hearted, she's also very seductive, and she looks absolutely stunning, beautiful.
yeah,
So for me, they've captured them two characters really well.
yeah.
The comparisons, you can tell what they were doing with the characters.
Yeah, so at dinner, Evie's trying to get out. There's like this cat and mouse thing where she initially gets caught. The maid that was serving her was feeling bad. let her out to try to escape. Of course, the maid doesn't end well for her. So Evie eventually does get caught again. This is by Nina and Jonathan Harker, who she thinks are supposed to going to help her. They are part of the whole cult plan or whatever was going on there. And so now we see Evie in a wedding dress being walked down the aisle towards Walter. The idea is once they've consummated or whatever, she's gonna drink from Walter, become a vampire, and like take some of his power. And this is something that I think Lucy explains to her how it's gonna work. Like it's gonna be different. She's gonna be powerful. I saw the ending gonna happen this way. This is how I kind of visioned it was gonna happen. Once she took the blood from Dracula. Before I get into my final thoughts, though, what did you think about the whole wedding scene and all that?
I thought it was really well done. I loved the setting. I loved how it looked, especially when you had like the dark preacher at the front who looked like something out of Mortal Kombat with the hood on and the mask, and he looked like something like that. And just even the transformation scene was well put together with her when she drinks his blood, and you can see her gaining his strength and his powers, and the whole part of the ceremony is she drinks from him first, takes his blood, then he's meant to drink from her and take her blood. But as you saw in the ceremony, she kept on clinging onto his arm and probably drank far too much blood than she should have. And he became temporarily weakened. And it was in that moment where she looked across and she seen the other maid who had not been, killed or was going to be sacrificed. And I think she just wanted to save herself and to save her. And then, like you say, the ending was pretty predictable, where now she had gained his strength, she decided to go crazy. And, I think prior to that, like you mentioned, the maid who was a friend, who became a friend, she mentioned she was a friend of her grandmother's who committed suicide, and she didn't want the same fate to happen to her, to what happened to her grandmother who was a friend. She, if you remember, also when she was running down the corridor, told her how to kill the vampires, either stake through the heart or via fire. And this is where it became predictable for me, is when she had mentioned they can be killed by fire. Behind the preacher who's doing the ceremony, they had nothing but a line of giant candles. And so what's the first thing she does when she gained the power? She just knocked the candles over and set fire to the whole ceremony room. And that's where all hell kind of breaks loose. And for me, this was the most action-packed and the funnest part of the film for me.
When she's taking the blood from Walter, it immediately reminded me of Kasha from Queen of the Damned when Lestat was doing the same thing, and it weakens them when she's like, "You're taking too much." Walter's kind of like doing the same kind of thing. He's like, whoa, easy, girl. But she already knows what she's going to be doing. She's all in at this point. And then,
well, I think because once she takes his blood and she gains his power, I think she then realizes this is my only way out. I've now got strength I didn't have before. I've got their abilities. If I want to get out, this is my chance to do it by using their abilities against them.
And this is where I start to kind of lose it with this film. So she gets the power. I kind of fully expected her to kind of go all carry on me here and like decimate everybody, which I would have liked. I would have liked this like powerful moment where she's like, "Okay, I've got your power now. Now it's on. Like now I can take care of myself and do the damage I need to do." She hits the candles, starts a fire. People are running that aren't really vampires, and then she stabs Walter with some sort of like
like some sort of ornament on the fireplace. She takes off, and when it's got a sharp end, and she just plunges it into his chest. And you suddenly then seen him start to
get old.
He got older. he started to shrivel up and become, to his true self, I would guess.
Yeah, so I it's like, okay, we see that happening, and then again, like she sees Oliver, and Oliver runs. Now we catch up with him a little later, but again, I kind of was hoping that she was like be quick and like slashing throats and getting people annihilated and stuff like that. And obviously, Victoria and Lucy are running to Dracula's aid, and they're kind of off screen from her. But then this is where like Victoria gets medieval. Like she's probably the most cold and brutal of all of them. I didn't think Dracula was. I thought Dracula should have been this way, but Victoria was like brutal. Like she's chasing Evie down the hallways and confronts her and tells her, "Well, Dracula's not quite dead because I can still do this." And the nails get long, and they start hashing it out a little bit. And then, of course, the unexpected happens. Lucy attacks Victoria. And I'm not entirely sure what Lucy's logical thinking is here, other than the fact that she really likes Evie. But she had to know it wasn't going to end too well because Victoria is like the dominant one of all the brides, really. But then we see this moment where Lucy and Victoria are fighting. Lucy sees like this spear from the statue that's protruding, and she like impales Victoria, but ends up impaling herself in the process. So they're both kind of looking at each other. Now you can tell, despite the difference of character between Victoria and Lucy, that they were close. They were very close.
You could tell. You could tell. Well, I think obviously they had both been impaled, and Victoria just looked at a wound and knew she was instantly gonna die.
Right.
And she looked at Lucy. And she had like this look on her face of like, I'm sorry kind of look. And she like puts her hand on her face and then they just start to like disintegrate.
Yeah.
Like we've seen in many vampire films where they just seem to disintegrate into dust.
Yep. And then of course she fights, I think, with Oliver at some point. Now this is the other thing about that we didn't mention. Despite the fact that the vampires do have their little lairs in the basements and the cellars and stuff, they can walk in daylight. They don't have any affliction to sun. So that was kind of an interesting, twilight twist there.
I think they can stay in the daylight for so long and then they have to go regenerate. And that's why they have their own coffins or their chambers.
Yeah.
I think that's the twist is where, yes, they can be out in sunlight, but only for so long. Because if you notice during the scenes when we did see Walter in the sun, he might be out for an hour, half, then he would go away into the library and you wouldn't see him for the rest of the day. And after that happens, I think the next fight wasn't with Walter, it was with Renfield.
Yeah.
Renfield had this long spear, and you can tell that it's a modern twist where he looks really down on her. She's not like from their world. She's like basically a skivvy, a servant. That's how he looks at her. I think he looks at her kind of in a way racist.
Well, and
her skin because she is
some of the underlying
white. She's half black, half white, or what? And he looks at her in that way, very down upon. And he even says, and it's one of my favorite lines where he says, "I can't wait to cut your head off and feed you to the wolves."
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, he kind of looks at her like, you have dirty blood. You really don't belong.
You've got dirty blood, and they were hinting definitely at like hint of racism there. But I love that scene, and then obviously she gets him back. She rips. With her strength, the new vampire, so she rips the top off the spear and just stabs him in the heart with it.
Yeah,
and he just falls down, and then she goes out back into the main hallway where there's after she knocked the candle off over, the whole manor is now engulfed in flames.
Yep,
which we need to mention, and that's when Walter suddenly appears and drops from the ceiling, but he's not completely the way he was before. he's half and half. He's half, wrinkled and half kind of, I guess, slowly regenerating back to who we've come to know.
Yeah.
And then just when you think it's going to get good and we're going to get a final, like a vampire on vampire battle, we don't get that at all. We just get some quick dialogue. I could have give you the world. You don't appreciate it. And I don't know, I can't remember what she said. I don't know if she just says fuck you or whatever. And she decides to super kick him and he goes flying into the back, and all you see gets engulfed in flames that is starting to like spread around from obviously the manor that's on fire. And he slowly begins to die. And as he begins to die, you slowly start to see her transform back into a human. And that's the main part of the movie. And like it was quite disappointing to see this is how it ended up.
Yeah. Well, before I give my final thoughts on the rating, what are your final thoughts on the film and your rating for the film?
My final thoughts are it had a lot of promise. It did. It had a great start. I love the start when you seen like it was back in the day, and you seen the grandmother, and you had that scene. That got my attention straight away. But it was too much of a slow burn, and when it started to pick up, it then went right back down. So for me. But I loved the setting. I loved how it looked. I loved the look of the film. I loved like the architecture, especially when she first arrived at the manor and she went into the main hallway and you saw like the statuettes and the old paintings, very gothic looking. But like you say, there was all that promise and build up, but the promise and the build up didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So because of that, I would give it. In the middle, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah. So you hit on a lot of points that I do. The movie's a slow burn early on, but it's still enjoyable. Like it's still a slow burn, but it's enjoyable. The ending, like I said, it lacked some satisfaction because I kind of like felt like once she got the power at the altar that I really did expect her to go like medieval on a bunch of people, and it just never really transpired.
Mm-hmm. There was no like payoff for the slow burn. It would slow burn, then it would show you something that would grab your attention, but then it would go back to like the slow burnness,
right.
And you kept on thinking it was a bit like a titty tease.
Right.
You thought you were going to get the prize at the end, and then there was no titties at the end of it.
Right. So yeah, the movie had a lot of promise. I liked the way that the director used the story and changed it up in a way that was cool seeing some of these main characters in different roles. But at the end, like it didn't really have the horror elements that I thought it should have. It kind of just stayed on like on a thriller type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I rated it a 5 out of 10 as well. That's where I'm at with it. Like it's good probably for one time viewing, but that ending like ruined what would have been a really good story.
Yeah, that had a lot of promise. It was a film that had a lot of promise, and it was good. Like you've mentioned a great point how it's like it's a retelling of the Dracula tale, and they've altered the characters and the story slightly into ways that were different, and that side of it is appealing and is different. But like you say, it's just the fact it's too much of a slow burn with. It's like a roller coaster that goes up, but then when you get to the top of the hill, the fall on the other end isn't what you're expecting it to be.
Right. Yeah, it's just that was the only disappointment. Like I was kind of waiting, and then when the ending came, I'm like, really? That's what you're gonna do to me? You're gonna do me dirty like that?
Yeah.
Well, that was, but good choice. I mean, it was a solid flick as far as like checking it out, and I don't know what I've got planned for next. I haven't really looked yet, but definitely will let you know what we're gonna do here with that. I have some ideas, but we'll see what I can find.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas for me next couple. because I've been waiting for a few to be released that I've seen. That's why I opted for this, because I thought, obviously, my work schedules and all that, and when one of the other choices was going to be released, I didn't think I'd have the time to do it. And I had seen this, and it had caught me interest, so that's why I decided to go with this choice.
Yeah. That was a good choice. It looked interesting. I'd seen it listed up there in Netflix and Shudder for a while. Just I've never watched it, so good choice there. I really do like the premise is really nice in this.
Yeah.
Nice little twist. What do you got coming up for your reviews and stuff?
So on the Kevin Lambert Entertainment Review page, I will be hopefully throughout this week. I will probably have a couple of reviews going up. Some films have I watched. I watched a film called Blood and Gold, which is on Netflix, which I really enjoyed. I'll also be reviewing the new Jackie Chan and John Cena movie. And I'll be bringing up, and hopefully some point this week I will be going to see the Meg 2, which I'll hopefully review for the people that want to, check out my page on Facebook. But I've heard some good things about it, and I've heard some bad things about it. But if people want to know what I think, then they know what to do. They need to check out my page. Yeah. How about yourself? What you got coming up?
Well, next week, I think next Friday, we're going to try to get to episode 4 of the my top 50 movies of the 21st century. We're kind of behind on that. We've got the first 3 episodes out. Still have 2 to go. So we'll try to get episode 4 done with that. And then Saturday, I've got an interview with a band called The Follow Me, female-fronted band. So we'll be doing a little interview with them and discussing their music a little bit. So that's the immediate future for me.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for checking out and watching this video, and keep supporting the channel, please, by hitting the like button and subscribing if you enjoy it. Please go check out Mr. Lambert's social media and Facebook page for his reviews. Does really good, great explained reviews for movies and stuff. So even concert reviews. He has concert reviews too. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir, for joining me. Hang tight, and then we'll see everyone else out the door. Keep it metal. Yeah. Take care of yourselves.